This podcast is for SEO professionals, and each week, with the help of our wonderful guests, we discuss the important stuff that actually affects our careers and progression, but sadly often doesn't get talked about. You know, the invaluable soft and interpersonal skills that are often taken for granted, such as the skills we need for listening, time management, communication, and more. We also talk about the big issues that affect us and our careers, such as burnout, imposter syndrome, self-belief, saying no, plus other big issues and obstacles. With this podcast, we want to share knowledge on topics that unlock our listeners' true potential and enhance not only their careers, but all parts of their lives. So, are you ready to prioritize your own personal growth and career development? Then let's crack on with this week's episode.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the SEO Mindset Podcast, where your hosts are myself, Tazmin Suleiman, and my wonderful friend and co-host Sarah McDowell. We have new episodes going out every single Thursday, and this week we're going to be talking about how you can transition from an exec role into a leadership role. And I'm joined by another dear friend, my dear friend, Miracle Inameti-Archibong. I enjoyed recording this so much. We talked about what the fundamental differences of those two roles are, how to establish if it's right for you to go into a leadership role, and some of the key skills that you need to succeed in that role. Because quite often that's the only route you have if you want to progress. That's the only route that seems available. But we also talk about alternative routes for progression if managing a team just doesn't sound like it's for you. Now, Miracle, she is head of search at John Lewis Finance and has over a decade of experience helping global and national brands increase their visibility. She has such a strong commercial acumen, natural drive, and a passion for people in her work. And if you know, as you listen to the podcast, a lot of emotional intelligence, which we talk about a lot. She also, alongside her role at John Lewis, she has contributed to events, to webinars, to publications, right from Brighton SEO, MOZCON, SMX, to Search Engine Land, and of course, Women in Tech. Many more as well, but Women in Tech deserves a special mention. Before we get into the episode, just want to remind you that if you'd like to support what Sarah and I are doing, there are lots of different ways of doing it. One, of course, is to donate to the podcast via the Buy Me a Coffee link, and also subscribe to the podcast, because then you'll never ever miss an episode. All of the links are in the show notes. And another thing, we would, as you know, we are celebrating our 100th episode this year, and to share that celebration with you all, we are doing a special giveaway. To say thank you to you all for being great listeners, Sarah and I are giving away some coaching, whether it's career coaching, myself, or SEO and podcast coaching. Then the link again is in the show notes, and we look forward to being able to give away some coaching as a thank you. Now, without further ado, let's talk to Miracle and all of her expertise in a role in leadership. Hello, Miracle. Welcome to another episode of the SEO Mindset Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
On this very hot Monday afternoon, I have to tell everyone. So Miracle and I, to serve everybody really well, we've closed all of our windows and turned off the fans to make sure that the recording is really, really good. But we are sweating here. It's so hot, but I'm not complaining. Is it really warm where you are, Miracle?
It's very warm. And I have just like my house opens to a field. So, and my son got stung by a bee yesterday. So I'm terrified of even leaving the window slightly open.
Oh I know that's horrible being stung. How old is he?
He's 12.
Oh, bless him. Bless him, bless him. So, Miracle and I, the reason I said welcome to another episode, Miracle and I already tried to record this once, and the sound quality on that was a bit off. So we're going in again, but it's such an important topic. I really am so pleased that we're recording this again because I heard Miracle talk about this topic, which is transitioning into a managerial role in, it was at Blue Array, wasn't it, Miracle?
Yes, this is it. It's been over a year now.
Yeah. But it's such, I think it's a really valuable topic to record on because when we think about career progression, which we talk about a lot on this podcast, so many people feel that that is the only path to go. And we don't often talk about it. We don't often challenge it, do we? We just take it as a given that if you want to further your career, you're going to need to go into a managerial role. Um, but it's very different, isn't it? The two roles going from an exec to a manager, it's chalk and cheese. What would you say are the fundamental differences between the two?
So, as you say, that there's such different roles, especially as you become the bigger the size of the team, isn't it? And depending on like how many people you have to manage, and if you have to bring like people with different skills and different functions together, it can be the success in that role. And remember that, when you become a people manager in that sense, you also have like key stakeholders to report to. So you're managing both up and down. So the success in that role then becomes less about your technical skills and then becomes more about like your soft skills, your people skills, how emotionally intelligent you are. And fundamentally the way it works with our model, you become really great. Like in the SEO world, you become a really great technical SEO whiz, and everyone's like, oh my god, that person is so great, they have so much skills, yet they're due for a promotion. Or you're really great at content, you do content so well. Those are usually the two, or PR and all of those things, and then you get promoted. But then that usually involves taking people on and becoming a people manager, and that side of it you probably have no experience in it. You might have mentored a junior member of a team, but it will usually be in a directive way where they say, oh, this person needs to learn XYZ, can you teach them? So not in like a day-to-day management way, but you then get handed, this team. Sometimes it can even be like you move from one job to another, and in your previous job you had no management, and then you move and instantly take over a team of 4, and you're like, wow, this is it's not about how much I know in terms of like channel technical skills. It's then I'll be, how can I manage these 4 people whilst doing a good job.
And confidence could well and truly shatter because if you've progressed really well, whether it's in a content role or a PR role, as you said, or a technical role, that's where your confidence is connected with. And you move into this different space, and suddenly you don't have that confidence, and you're having to do things that you've got no idea how to do, but suddenly you're the one in charge of a team. It would be so difficult.
Yes, and that's why understanding what your role as a people manager is, or understand what your role as a manager, the higher you go, is super important. Because the higher you go as a manager, imagine being that person who used to build amazing Excel spreadsheet. Like you could do weird things in Google Sheets, you could connect APIs, all of that. And then, as time goes, you're hardly ever looking at Google Sheets. And then someone brings up this question and you're like, I'm no longer the most technical person in the room. I'm no longer the person who can go into GTM and write a script, and and then you start, and if you're not, and that's why some managers find it hard to delegate or to give praise, so you need to understand, what is my job function now? What is my role? And what is the added value that I bring to the team to succeed in roles like this?
Yeah. I remember the first time I was promoted into a managerial role, um, and it was within the team that I still belonged to. I remember feeling sort of embarrassed that suddenly I had to tell my peers what to do, give them praise, delegate to them. I felt apologetic. I felt like I wasn't entitled, I wasn't giving myself permission. But without giving yourself that permission, you've got no chance of succeeding, have you?
You have no chance. I mean, when I was doing when I spoke recently in Berlin, Women in Tech SEO, I talked about taking the time to give yourself the promotion. Because yes, other people
Mm.
have given you the promotion, but you have to take the time to say, okay, you know, I was good at this. This is what I did to get this promotion. Now I have to accept all of the feedback that have been given me that I can do this, I can do that. And then I have to be like, okay, so what does this new role, what does this new role entail? And then instead of going back to my comfort zone of all the things I love to do, just tackle the things that this new role entail that will need to succeed. And that will be, what you're talking about, the managerial side, the delegation side. And the thing is, confidence is infectious in that kind of way, because if you don't elude confidence to your team, they start to see it. And they start to believe in you less, because, well, they're like, well, if this person doesn't believe they know what they're doing, why should I believe they know what they're doing? And they can start to do what I call reverse managing, where they kind of like, you delegate to them and they redelegate to you, and then before you know it, you're the one who has to report to them, and then you're in charge of all the deadlines because you're just too scared to like. And this happens a lot when people are promoted up within their teams. Like, this person used to be my colleague, and people shy away from having those difficult conversations to be like, hey, this is where we were. This is what I can see happening. But just so you understand, this is what I want to do moving forward. And you have to address these things head on. If not, they become this big cloud hanging over your head, and, and it builds more and more and more. And people, lines get blurred if you don't just address things head on.
I love what you said then, that you have to give yourself permission to have that promotion yourself. Because I think that I've never heard anyone say that. And it makes so much sense, because other people may have believed in you, but you then have to, so you've got these big shoes that you've created, but your feet are really small. You need to grow your feet, step into them, and start moving forward. So essentially what you're saying is, when you are an exec or in that level, there is a lot of doing, whether it's writing or analyzing or whatever it is. But in the managerial role, it's more people skills, soft skills. Would you say is that's broadly what the big difference is between the two?
Yes, that's probably what the big difference is. It's more coaching and mentoring. So
Yeah.
that, and all of the things that go with being able to be a good coach and a good mentor is all the emotional skills, the soft skills, the people skills, the communication, adaptability, the ability to listen, to collaborate. I think one of the key things is being able to create an environment of psychological safety. And this is where people are free to like openly disagree with you, surface complaints and concerns without fear of any negative repercussions. So you're open to taking feedback, and you can give feedback, and people within your team can contribute and voice their opinions and disagree with you. And all this can be done in a safe space, and it doesn't lead to any kind of malice or grudges or see. So there is a lot of emotion, there's a lot of maturity that is needed, that is not just like oh, I'm going to learn how to build XYZ. So those, and it's really interesting to see that, whilst people would learn, like, when you start in a company, especially, we'll use SEO because this is the SEO Mindset podcast, you start with doing keyword research and you learn how to do it well, and someone gives you additional responsibility. But in the management setting, people are just promoted straight into management without any training, without any, we'll test you, it's when you then show yourself, maybe as a good manager, or then you get promoted higher. But that first role, most of the time, is never about your ability to manage, or you probably never had any experience or training, and you just have to like figure it out yourself. So knowing all these things ahead of time is really key to succeeding in that role. I think I saw a stat that I shared that says 40% of new managers fail within the first 3 months, just because they have no training and they don't understand what's expected of them now.
So you mentioned the training element. I was lucky that, one, I had a really great manager myself, and there was a training course that I could go on. Plus, I had a great team. Um, Do you think that without the training, it's really, really difficult?
I think it's really difficult to understand what the expectation is and to reassure yourself, especially for I mean, there are people who are naturally confident and they just attack it in that way. But there are people who really struggle to understand what benefit they bring to the team when they're no longer that technical whiz or the person doing all the content, and then they struggle, and that's why they struggle to delegate. I've worked with a manager who was so good at building reports, so good at creating these decks, that they would just lock themselves away in a corner and do only that, and the entire team was just left to themselves, and they will build this complex, reporting tools and things. And I'm like, what is all this for? What is all this for? So it's very easy to get, into that comfort zone because this is what I'm good at. And so that's why training is needed, or some kind of, I mean, I did this amazing, or I'm doing this amazing apprenticeship course, and it's really spelling out what the goals of a senior leader is. And I was like, oh, I've never really understood the value in terms of like that strategic thinking piece and that ability to stand at a high level view and look down. And I never really appreciated it. I never really saw that as a thing, but you can see that that's what great leaders do. That great leaders have this ability to bring people together to work towards a common vision, and they're not the actual ones doing.
Mm.
And so you need to get to a point where you really appreciate that in yourself for you to be effective.
And I think when it happens well, it's quite magical because the outside the box thinking that happens when you are in the depths of the detail, you can't see it. You need to be able to take a big step back because otherwise the organization doesn't progress. No, so how can you tell whether me going into a managerial role is right for me? If there's any of our listeners who are thinking about doing it, what advice would you give them?
So the first thing to ask yourself is, how well do you enjoy handling complex emotion? Because I mean, I guess if one to one, there's less of that, but when you have big teams, there is a lot of handling emotions. And how self-aware are you? I find, a lot of people are just not self-aware, and sometimes when you give them this feedback, they're so taken back, like they've never heard it before. You're like, really? You've gone through your whole life not knowing you did this or that? So it's that a big part of it is not just, teaching people how to do a technical audit, or that is handling people's emotion, the way they deal with things, the way they respond to problems, and being able to adapt to that. I mean, there is a research by the Workforce Institute of UKG, I think it's called UK People Operations, that 70% of employees say that their manager affects their mental health more than their spouse, their doctor, or their therapist. Is
Wow.
such a big role. So you need to ask yourself, do I enjoy coaching and mentoring people? Do I just want to go there and build this amazing thing and both things are valuable. Both things are valuable. And that's why we really need to say, you sit down and ask yourself, would I, if there was another way to get a promotion, would I want to manage people? Because sadly, a lot of companies have created it as the only route to go ahead. And so because of that, people just feel, well, now I have to manage people. And it's just this thing that they have to do that's such a burden to them, But both routes are valid. And I think this is on organizations as well, because they need to create more routes that are not about people managing for people who do not want to manage people.
What you said about self-awareness, and it's strange because it is such an important part of leading a team. If you can't understand yourself and lead yourself, there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to understand others and lead them. Leadership starts with you.
Yep. And it's so key to be able to understand why you're reacting to certain things in a certain way. Why do I feel offended by what that person is saying? Why do I feel this? Why is this person triggering this in me? It's so key to remember, to be able to understand your own style. Because a lot of times I've had before, I used to be like, oh, I appreciate my team. I do this, I do that. And then, you'll get this feedback from people that they don't feel appreciated. And I'm like, why? But then I realized I was appreciating them the way I want to be appreciated, not the way that, they want to be appreciated. So I started asking people, like, how do you want to be appreciated? And if you never sit back and think about, oh, why do I do this? Does this work for me? You really, and that's that emotional intelligence, to be able to sit back and ask yourself, how can I make things better, rather than, blaming other people, or say there's so many situations where you can be so blind because you haven't really sat down and examined, why am I reacting in this way? You can just put it on people. And I think changing perspective can be such an eye opener, because when you change such an eye opener in different situations, they're like, oh, okay, maybe I can be open to doing things differently, and that can help.
Yeah. And, a person in that role, as you said, has to be aware of themselves, has to understand how to deal with emotions. Your job is to get the work done through other people. And if you can't understand them and understand that your team is of various different people, they're not going to be the same. And it's complicated, but if that's the way you are inclined, then you will thrive in that environment. And if you want to sit down building reports, and maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, it's very complicated, I have to say. And the more people you have to manage, and the bigger the teams, and all, it's very complicated, because your job is just to get, the best out of the people that
Yeah.
you are managing for your company. And so, in order to get the best out of them, you need to be able to figure out what they respond to. And then you have to be able to adapt your style. And if you're not emotionally intelligent to figure out what they respond to, it can become a constant struggle.
We recorded an episode about emotional intelligence in leadership. I'm going to link that to the show notes. So anybody who's listening to this can go off and listen to that one as well, because I think the two really blend well together. Look, Miracle, we've talked about a lot of great stuff, and we're going to go off for a break in a minute. What would you like our listeners to take, one key takeaway from part one for them?
I want people to really understand that not wanting to be a people manager is not a bad thing. It's just like everyone has different skills. Everyone has different skill sets and different strengths. And if you're not good at managing people, and if that doesn't mean that you're not great at what you do. And so we shouldn't all just aspire to be a people manager because we feel that that's the next step, or that's what makes you look great in your career. Examine yourself. If this is really not what you want to do, be truthful to yourself. Then look to your business structure, and speak to your manager, your heads of department, and see if there is a way they can create just a consultant route for you, so that you can just keep doing those amazing things you do brilliantly.
Yeah. And I'll add a little thing, that if part of you still really wants to be a people manager, it can be hugely rewarding for those people that are that way inclined. Miracle enjoys it. I've enjoyed it. It's rewarding. It's fulfilling. And when it works well, it's a thing of magic.
To celebrate reaching 100 episodes, still can't quite believe I'm even saying those words. Crikey, how did we make it this far? Anyway, I'm derailing myself. To celebrate reaching 100 episodes, me and Tazmin have decided to do a competition. We're doing a giveaway. So, 4 lucky listeners have the chance to win a one-to-one private life or career coaching session with Tazmin, or a 1-hour one-to-one SEO or podcast coaching session with myself. So if you fancy a bit of that, if you fancy winning time with either me or Tazmin to work on your life career goals, or maybe you want help with SEO or starting a podcast, then get on over to the show notes, because there's a link to the competition and how you can enter. Good luck, everyone. Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organizations share their stories online. Dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. Their services include photography, consultancy, and social media management. Clear Narrative Media is here to transport your visions to life. They are on a mission to help you to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance your business and professional growth overall. For more information, head over to their website at cnmedia.com or follow the link in the show notes. Sarah here, just quickly popping on to remind you of how you can support the podcast. You can give me and Tazmin a one-off donation. We are set up on Buy Me a Coffee. There is a link in the show notes, and we'd be very much appreciative of that. You can also subscribe to the podcast. So in the show notes again, you'll see a link where you can subscribe on your preferred podcast playing app, whether that is Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, whatever you prefer. And whilst you're there, why not give us a cheeky 5-star review? Yeah, SEOs, you know how algorithms work. So all the lovely reviews that we can get will help the podcast.
Hi, Miracle. We are now back for part 2 of a very interesting conversation about leadership and the differences between an exec role and a leadership role. So before the break, we talked about what were the key differences and how you could figure out whether that was the right career path for you. Just wanted to talk about what are the key skills. So we've talked about the people skills and the emotional intelligence. What would you say would be the other key skills to really succeed in that type of role?
One of the things that, again, following the soft skills that I think is essential for a leader to have is listening skills. And I love this definition that I learned when I was in counseling. I was trying to recall the lady, I think her name is Sarah, who defined listening as like holding yourself in check. And I think because we've had, as a leader or a manager, you've had so many years of experience, and then you get into these situations full of ideas that sometimes you can fail to give your team that space to blossom and to have different viewpoints. And so I think listening is such an important skill, and it's what creates that. It's what fosters collaboration. It creates that psychological safety, because when you listen to people, they feel free to speak up. When you're non-judgmental, they feel like, oh, okay, I can, I might not have a full idea, but I can, bring it to the team and we can discuss it, and maybe we can make it a full idea. I think a lot of business have paid dearly for not listening, because you have, all of these experienced people in a room with loads of junior people. And then because their experiences are so different, when they speak, like senior leaders wouldn't listen. And I think about like the Netflix blockbuster issue, when, they came and said, oh, people are going to want to watch this in their house, and then Blockbuster people say, how? People have been renting, CDs for years and years, and you can imagine who made that decision, and the ages of the people in the room. And that's why listening is so important, because you might miss out on a new emerging trend, you might miss out on a new way of doing things if you fail to listen to your team. Communication, and when I say communication, I think it's not just giving and receiving information. I think one of the key things to succeed in a role like this is the ability to have difficult conversations. And that is feedback, and it's both ways. So to give it and to take it. I find so many managers, leaders, really, really struggle to give that constructive criticism, to give that feedback, especially if they have like inspirational leadership style where, I really want to, but then you forget that. And this is where we talk about reframing the issue, where like giving feedback is giving someone a development opportunity. It's not just, scolding them and making them feel bad. You are giving them that development opportunity. And sometimes people haven't had that before. And there is this thing that brews when you don't give people feedback, is because other people see the way they're behaving. And this is what a lot of businesses do. They wait and wait until that discontent has spread to the entire team, because everyone sees one person behaving badly. They see that no one's calling that person to action. They talk about it amongst themselves. They maybe complain to you. Nothing gets done. And then the whole team gets apathetic because they feel like, well, nothing's going to be done. Why am I slaving away when this person can get away with X, Y, Z? So that ability to have difficult conversations. I've seen businesses where nobody wants to say no. So they don't really say no. They just like, yeah, we'll come to that later. And then people don't know that they said no. And then because nobody wants to have that difficult conversation, and they keep working on that particular piece of work, and then they get to a point where, oh, I've spent all of these months working on this and really it's not going live and someone should have told me. So it's that ability to have difficult, straightforward conversations in a timely way so that people can understand the direction that the business is going in, and I think and understand how they need to change. That's another big one.
I think you wrote a LinkedIn post about that, about a manager not having a difficult conversation with the person who's not performing, and then the team becoming quite apathetic. And then in the end, even when the manager does speak to that individual, even if they are then let go of the team from the team, the manager themselves is very rarely reprimanded for not taking action.
Yep. Yep. Very rarely reprimanded for not taking action. And the thing is, when you leave feedback until it's too late, because the other members of the team see this person as incompetent, they start to act like that person is incompetent. There's so many non-verbal communication cues that you radiate, and then that person starts to lose their confidence. And so by the time you have that conversation with the person, it's too late. A lot of times it's so late that you can't really claw the person out of that. And then it's like, okay, we're going to put you in performance improvement. And then you go down that route. You start nitpicking on everything the person does. And eventually the person is like, well, that's it. I have to leave now because we can't rebuild this relationship. And that's why it's really important to give timely feedback. And because we're human beings, we have like, we operate in transference, and you would know this as a coach, where someone's given me, someone's not said something where the person's reacting to me in a certain way, and then you start having all these passive aggressive conversations. And then you start misinterpreting, anything the person says. You receive an email, you read it in that nasty voice, and it just becomes, this thing that could have been talked about and trashed out and settles now becomes this big mountain thing that everyone has to like skit about, and just breeding discontent in the team. So I think it's one of the things I've seen break a lot of teams.
And it goes back to what you said about a manager's the way your manager is impacts your mental health more than any family member. If this is your every working day, then it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel nice. You're not going to feel energized. You certainly aren't going to do your best work. So it's for everyone's best interest, by nipping it in the bud, trying to understand what is it this person is struggling with. Do they need more training? Because sometimes it could be that the onboarding hasn't been done correctly, or could do with improvement, or they need a little bit of help or coaching or training, and that'll get them back on track. It doesn't always have to be this bigger than, this awful scenario.
Yeah, and that's why I always start conversations like that with asking the person, what was your intention? Because I might see your action and misinterpret it, thinking, oh my God, this person is trying to do this. But I'll say, what was your intention? And when the person, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I wanted you to do as well. But your action hasn't matched your intention or hasn't come across by your action. And then explaining to the person the impact that has had on the team or the business and say, okay, this is the new expectation that we are setting. Do you understand that? And is it all clear? So thinking about things like that as a better way rather than focusing on, how I felt in that instance, how that made me feel, and the person themselves, but just focusing on the action, the impact on the team, the impact on the business, allowing the person to clarify their intention to be, because a lot of times it's like, oh, I don't want this person to think they're a bad person. But our intentions can be so good, but the action we took then didn't match it. So when that person can clarify their intention, they still feel, okay, I was trying to do a good thing, or I'm trying to do a good thing, I just don't know how to go about it. And that way it takes it away from, I'm attacking this person's personality and stuff, to like, we are talking about what's best for the business or what's best or how to succeed in the role.
So true. And you alluded before the break that things like stakeholder management is also something that will be quite new to you when you enter this role. What advice would you give on that?
I think there is something I saw on my master's program about when for strategic leadership. It's called systems thinking. And I think that's really so important. And I think a lot of SEOs, we need to learn this, because you sometimes go in thinking my problem is the biggest problem. And all I need to do is to push this through and get it resolved. I think it's so important to step back and look at the holistic picture of the business. What is the digital maturity of my channel, of the business as a whole? What are they trying to achieve? What are my stakeholders' KPI? How does that impact the business? This one bug I want fixing realistically, and the 10,000 things that's on the development list, will this add more value to the business than that? And then thinking about how you communicate that to stakeholders. How do I understand what their KPIs, align my own to them? It's that big picture thinking. I once spoke to a team that were like, oh, putting a business case together for why a website that was supposed to be launched, it's been delayed for 2 years, can't go live without this one SEO recommendation. And I was like, get a grip. Like, get a grip. Like, this website launch has been delayed for 2 years. Imagine all the man hours, the development hours, the cost to the business. And then now, we're right at the time of pressing go. And it's like, this one SEO thing is the key. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, the most important thing at this time should be that this goes live. So is that being able to like think about and consider other people's goals and KPIs within. So, and that's why you need to, you can't do SEO in silo. You have to step outside your channel, look at the whole acquisition line, and look at the whole touch points of the website and different, and that's stakeholder management, getting to know other people, getting to understand their priorities, getting to know what makes the business tick, and building those relationships so you understand that and you can see the bigger picture rather than being in your own zone and be like, well, this one thing is the single most important thing that needs to get done. And if you understand that and you can then align that goal, and then, it's also, and not just that, when you manage stakeholders in that way, you're also able to educate them on the benefit of the SEO problem. I call it like socializing the SEO problem. And so I can get the SEO problem on not just the SEO roadmap, I can get you on the product roadmap, I can get you on the commercial roadmap, and I have more advocates. I'm building more advocates for the SEO issue. And then I can give the commercial team, when I'm reporting, I can give them the metrics they want to report, and I can say to them, oh, yeah, this drove 3,000 more sales. And then I can give the UX guys, I'm like, wow, customers dwelled in here. So it's just understanding what it takes to get the SEO problem on other people's roadmap, managing them, building that relationship. So those are the key things when you're in a senior position.
And it just as you were speaking, so we've already talked about emotional intelligence, about people skills, about performance management, we've talked about strategy, we've talked about delegation, communication, and now this element, which is a commercial awareness, alongside a raft of other skills like project management and task delegation. And, it's complicated, but equally, I don't want to put anyone off. If this is what you really want to do, then it can be really exciting, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. So I love it. I'm always saying to my team, follow the money. I love it. I mean, it seems a lot, but then when you're in the moment, it's just your day to day. So I love it. It's exciting to me. I like to be able to say, the SEO team, contributed how many million to the business. So I like to be able to have those numbers to hand to be able to, speak up, in big meetings to celebrate my team's win. So if you don't have those commercial realization, you're like talking to a room full of people who don't know what keywords are. I mean, I tell my team, I say to, please do not say keywords, don't even, communicate in the way that people will be interested and people will not just roll their eyes and thinking, you communicate with the metrics that everyone is, we're writing content for our users so that they understand our products and so they buy more. That's the only reason we're doing this. Nobody wants to sit down, writing 700 pieces of words just for Google. Nobody wants to do that. It's not. So it's all about those key things and those metrics that gets people excited. We're all working towards the same goal. At the end of the day, we all have the same values. The way of expressing those values are different, but we're all working towards the same goal. So, and if you can communicate that to other teams, and then they buy into what you're trying to do. But when it's about, if you say, well, my value is different, isn't it? My value is to drive visits and the UX value is just to make things beautiful. No, all of you have the same value. You're trying to make the company more money. And so making everybody aware of that, building relationships that secure that is just the key. Yeah.
That is a very beautiful place to end this conversation. Not that we've even scratched the surface, but I think we've given a really broad overview of it. But what you said that, we're all working towards the same goal, and that's the job of the manager to help their teams align to that. Really brilliantly said. Thank you. So, Miracle, we are sadly running out of time. I knew we would. I knew we would. But we always ask our guests a few questions. So one thing is, what's your main takeaway that you want people to get from this episode?
I mean, I said it the first time, and probably because it's the main takeaway, I'll say it again. I think, the effect a people manager can have on people's well-being,
Yeah,
and to just understand that and have a lot of patience for your team. And that's why it's so important to have emotional intelligence.
brilliant. Absolutely. That's really important stuff. In terms of career advice for you, what's the best piece you've ever received?
I'm an introvert, as much as like people might be like, "What you speak?" And say, "Yeah, I am an introvert." And when I first became a manager, I used to avoid like the part of management that will get you, make you succeed. That is the stakeholder management, the relationship building outside my team. I used to so run away from that. I know, and after a disastrous meeting, one of the best mentor I've had, he said something to me. He said, meetings are not the best place to get buy-in. They're where you cement buy-in. And that has always stayed with me. And that was where I learned the importance of like stakeholder management and building relationships outside the meeting room and outside just work. I mean, he said to me, every time you meet a new stakeholder, you should spend at least the first 5 minutes talking about something not work related, and that's because you have to humanize each other and then find a common ground, something to build that relationship on. And that's something I've taken, I've taken with me, like, and the higher you go, the more senior stakeholders you meet and the more people you meet from different backgrounds. And so I'm always trying to find that common ground, something that we can, when we meet outside. And that's why, it gets so awkward when you're like, oh, I don't want to go and socialize because I'm so scared I have nothing to say. But if you take the time to just, build this common ground, find, it can be something simple as, I'm doing my house. And then that person talks about when they did their house, and that becomes your running narrative. That can really help with building relationships.
That's really good advice. And it's like you said, it's one that wouldn't come naturally to many introverts because they're that would be quite scary. That would be way out of their comfort zone. That's great advice. And last question, who is someone who's doing some really great work? It could be within the world of SEO or outside that you think we should be following.
I'm obsessed with Esther Perel. I'm so obsessed with her because she does like several work podcasts, like How is Work, and these are, or Where Should We Begin, and especially How is Work looks at like the relationships between people at work and how people fall out, and it always links back to like our family dynamics. That's why emotional intelligence is so important, but that's some deep stuff. But for anyone who's interested in that intersection between counseling and, you know, how people react and what people are thinking and why am I reacting like that, you know, that kind of journey to self-awareness, I think that's a really good place to start How is Work. I love what Paddy Mugan is doing now. He's doing a lot of talks about management and people managers and being a good people manager. And oh my God, this is my dear friend. And if I butcher her surname, please forgive me. I love what Petra Kizhazek.
Yeah.
I did say that several times on LinkedIn, trying to pronounce her name really well. She talks about the buying-ish circle, and she's doing this amazing master's in neuroscience, and talks about like how bias can affect, you know, buying and stakeholder management and all of those things. Really exciting stuff, I think.
Petra's amazing. In fact, you are the second person in 2 recordings that I've done, or I've asked a question and Petra's name has cropped up. So she's at the top of our leaderboard, I would imagine. The big Reed, Shima, and Petra. Brilliant. Miracle, thank you so much for this. You said that you're going to be talking about this again at Brighton SEO. Which day are you speaking?
And the schedule is not out yet, but when it comes out, I will share and post, and I hope people come and see my talk.
I definitely will be. If I'm free, if I'm not doing something for the podcast, I will be there because I love the talk that you did at Blue Array. I've heard great things about the one that you did at the Women in Tech Festival. So if this is the next level up, I'm so in.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Well, so all that leaves for me to do is to say goodbye to you listeners, and to remind you that, look, if you've enjoyed this podcast and episode, there will be another one also along the lines of leadership that Sarah's recording, how to be a better leader amid uncertainty and volatility. So just keep a watch out. And of course, if you subscribe to the podcast, you will never, ever miss an episode. If you're enjoying what Sarah and I are doing and you'd like to support us, and there are multiple ways to do it. One is to donate via Buy Me a Coffee, and of course, as I just mentioned, subscribe. And don't forget that there is currently a giveaway because we want to celebrate our 100th episode with all the listeners. So the giveaway is a chance to have some coaching with either myself or Sarah. All of the links will be in the show notes. So please go and find them and support away and enter away. Miracle, thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing all of this podcast come together, and definitely looking forward to hearing you at Brighton.
Thank you for having me.
Looking to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance growth for your business, organization, or yourself? Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media and marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organizations share their stories online. Dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. You can find them on all social media platforms and online at cnmediaa.com or follow the link in the show notes.